The last of the ribs are in today. I spared you going through the repetition of putting them in. And here we go. So really quite pleased, including the stern. You need to clean up a little bit and take off the excess. For the back part of the ribs, you remember that we were checking the position of the port and starboard using the front reference. It became too difficult, and so we established a center point on the stern, and we've been using that point to determine the top position of the various ribs. And I'm happy to report that it's spot on. The first rib number 1, sticks up above the gunnel and is used to tie ropes off at the bow. The inner gunnel has a curved piece that will match the gunnel as it goes up the side. So this is a relatively simple job. Measure it out. We're using 4-inch stock, and although again the dimensions are not given, the thickness of the piece as it hits the stern will also be 4 inches. The first thing we do is to clean up the back, level it out as much as possible so we get a nice tight fit, and then we go on the scroll saw and cut the piece out. I didn't have a sanding piece that would fit on the spiral sander, so back to the old Dremel, which really is the most versatile tool in the shop. We got a really nice tight fit, and again we should seek to get tight fits wherever possible. So we've made up the two pieces and we'll fit them in. We've made up the knee, which braces the stern of the boat and gives it some strength and attaches it back to the keel. Again, this was carved on the scroll saw and then cleaned up with sandpaper and that same Dremel disc or drum sander because of the tightness of the curve. In the inside bottom of the boat, there are some braces which in a galleon type vessel would be referred to as a floor. In this case, it may simply be a brace that is used to hold the ribs together and provides a foundation for the floorboards. We are estimating that there are 5 floors, one in front of rib 16, one facing the stern on the bulkhead. They seem to switch around, and it looks like there's one in front of rib 12 and the reverse on rib 10, and then finally in the front seat there seems to be one again facing the stern. Now that's not absolutely laid in stone because it's very hard to determine from the book how many there were. And they seem to go to the second plank on the floor, because none of the dimensions, internal dimensions, are now given, so we're estimating based on the photographs, and of course we don't know the size or the width of the floorboards. Visually they seem to be about 20 inches, so what I'm trying to do is establish the main floorboard, which will then determine the height of the floors, which will then allow me to make up the other planks that fit on the side of the main or king plank. From the photograph, it looks like they were just two side planks of the king plank. The first two are meant to hold the king plank tight inside because the king plank would come in and out, while the two side planks, they would be stuck or screwed onto the ribs themselves. Once we fit one, we use that as a template to cut out the other two. We've determined that there is one extra floor or brace, which is right at the last rib near the stern. Again, this is one of the, in a sense, disappointments with the book, that it didn't show detailed dimensions and didn't have a lot of photographs of the inside of the vessel. So I've had to try and figure it out, looked at lots of photographs, and then came to this conclusion. I decided to make the king plank or main floorboard removable. It's a little tight right now, and I'm sure when I go to paint it I'll have to do some sanding. Hindsight is 2020. One of the mistakes we made is not leveling out the ribs that are going to take the internal deck planks. The ideal time to have done that was when none of these seats were in and we could get tools in here. Now it's actually very difficult to do. Still, we were able to do it, and we're now going to stick the second of the stern deck planks on. Because of the nature of these boats, they tend to be fairly weak in the center because of the way they're built. And so it was important that a brace be applied to the front of the seat, which ties the sides of the boat into the seat and really becomes a stabilizing issue. The back of the seats had a support, and there are no pictures of the two front seats, but it's illogical to think that they wouldn't also have a support, because the key that held these pirogues together were the seats. So the seat became the most important part of the strength of the boat. One of the most important parts of modeling is really cleaning up as we go along and trying to finish as much of the detail that we can while we're doing the piece. If we put this off until the very last moment, it's really, we're going to rush it, and you won't get the quality of finish that the model deserves. The last piece of the internal work is the installation of the inner gunnel, and we've cut out a bunch of stock and we're going to start to put it in. In some cases the rib comes right through to the top and then it'll just be sanded flush. In other cases it passes over the frame. It seems like every fourth frame pops up. It's very hard to tell because most of the pictures that show the inner gunnel are painted yellow. And this is where you're going to need those very sharp chisels. You need to mark it out and make sure you make no mistakes, because if you get it short, it's going to be very visible. Although I said we were going to cut every four, it doesn't make sense to cut the elbow, because that would be taking away half of the strength of it. I'm not sure from the book whether they would have wanted to do that from a boat building point of view. I'm not going to do it. Although this isn't the strongest way to make the gunnel, remember that we have a solid piece outside, roughly the same thickness. So the inside is really giving it support and providing a finish for the internals. Also a surface, if you were going to put a series of rowlocks, it gives you the surface to do that on. The final little piece was to cut down the stem, which we've done temporarily. We'll clean that up later when the bottom of the boat is totally completed. The only thing left to do on the inside of the boat now is to install the thole pins, which are the rowlocks on the first, just off the first seat. We're not going to do that now because we need to start working on the bottom of the boat. And I really want to keep this surface as flat as possible just to assist in that. So we'll see you in the next video, which will be the preparation of the bottom of the boat.